Bus driver forced little girl to kneel. Then Hell's Angels biker filled the parking lot. The streets were lined with neatly trimmed trees, the sun rising slowly behind the houses, and the smell of breakfast drifting through open windows. Children hurried along the sidewalks, some holding their backpacks tightly, others chatting and laughing with friends as they made their way to school. Among them was a little girl named Emily, just 8 years old, bright-eyed and curious, excited about the day ahead. She had her favorite pink backpack and a lunchbox decorated with cartoon animals. It was a day like any other, or at least that's what everyone thought. Emily had always loved riding the school bus. She liked watching the world pass by the window, seeing familiar faces from her neighborhood, and waving at friends as they climbed aboard each morning. The bus itself was large and yellow, gleaming in the early morning sun, with rows of neatly arranged seats. The driver, Mr. Thompson, had been with the school district for many years. Most people in town knew him as strict but fair, someone who kept order on the bus. However, for reasons no one could immediately understand, this morning would be different. As Emily stepped onto the bus and found her usual seat near the back, she noticed a tension in the air. Some of the older kids were unusually quiet, whispering among themselves and glancing nervously toward the front. The bus hummed gently as it rolled forward, the tires making a soft rhythm on the asphalt. Everything seemed normal at first, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Halfway through the route, as the bus passed familiar houses and turned onto a quieter street, the driver suddenly called Emily's name. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked around, confused, unsure why he was calling her out in front of everyone. Slowly, she made her way to the front of the bus, her small hands clutching the strap of her backpack. Other children watched in silence, their eyes wide with curiosity and apprehension. When she reached the front, Mr. Thompson said something that Emily didn't fully understand at first. His tone was firm and unyielding. Before she could respond, he asked her to kneel. Shocked and frightened, Emily hesitated. The bus felt smaller, almost stifling, and she could hear the whispers of the other children growing louder. She wanted to protest, to explain herself, but the words caught in her throat. Kneeling in front of the entire bus made her feel exposed and vulnerable, a feeling she had never experienced before. Her small body trembled slightly as she lowered herself to the floor, glancing around at her classmates who were staring at her in disbelief. The other children were silent. Some looked confused, others concerned, but no one spoke up. The tension on the bus was thick, almost tangible, like a heavy fog that made breathing difficult. Emily's mind raced. She didn't understand why she was being singled out, why a simple bus ride had turned into something so strange and upsetting. She tried to focus on her breathing, telling herself that it would soon be over, that the ride would continue, and that she would get off the bus safely at her stop. As the minutes passed, Emily began to feel embarrassed and humiliated. Her classmates shifted in their seats, some glancing nervously at each other, unsure of how to react. A few older children whispered quietly, casting worried looks toward the front of the bus. The air was thick with unspoken questions. No one knew what to do. The bus moved on, the familiar scenery outside the windows passing unnoticed, as if the world itself had become part of the tense silence inside. Meanwhile, outside the bus, some parents were already noticing the unusual scene. People walking their dogs or driving to work caught glimpses of the children inside and saw Emily kneeling near the front. Phones were pulled out instinctively, some snapping quick photos, others sending hurried messages to friends or family. Word traveled fast, as it often does in small towns, and within moments, whispers of the incident began spreading. Parents worried and speculated about what had happened. The simple rhythm of the morning had been disrupted, replaced by confusion and concern. Back on the bus, Emily tried to make sense of what was happening. She had never experienced anything like this. She thought about telling Mr. Thompson she was sorry if she had done something wrong, but she couldn't even remember if she had done anything at all. Her mind spun with questions. Did I make a mistake? Did I upset him somehow? Why me? The sense of being singled out made her feel small, even though she was normally confident and cheerful. Every second felt longer than the last, and she wished desperately for someone to come and explain why she had to kneel. Some of the children on the bus wanted to comfort her. One little boy seated nearby quietly said, "It's okay, Emily." but his voice was barely audible, swallowed up by the bus's interior hum and the weight of the situation. Others exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unsure if they should intervene. Emily's fear mixed with confusion, creating a sense of helplessness that she had never felt before. She tried to focus on small things, the pattern on the seat, the light streaming through the window, but nothing could distract her from the strange and uncomfortable reality she faced. For Mr. Thompson, the bus driver, the moment seemed normal in his mind, though no one fully understood his reasoning. Perhaps he believed he was teaching a lesson or maintaining order, but the effect on Emily and the children around her was immediate and profound. Children are naturally sensitive to authority figures, and the power dynamic in this situation made Emily feel exposed and anxious. Even for those who had experienced discipline or correction before, seeing a peer treated in such a public and humiliating way was alarming. As the bus continued its route, the murmurs from other children grew. Some whispered speculations, others questioned what had happened. "Why is she kneeling?" one child asked quietly. "Did she do something wrong?" Another shook their head, a mixture of worry and discomfort written on their face. Emily kept her head low, trying to ignore the growing attention, wishing she could disappear. The bus ride, which should have been a mundane start to the day, had turned into a moment that would be remembered for years by those who witnessed it. The story began to spread beyond the bus as the morning wore on. When Emily finally reached her school, some teachers noticed the distress on her face and the unusual tension among the students. They quickly escorted her to the office, where she was comforted and given a safe space to process what had happened. Parents were called, and the school administration began to investigate. What started as a simple bus ride had escalated into a community concern, drawing attention from adults who wanted answers and accountability. For Emily, the experience was confusing and frightening. She had been treated in a way that made her feel powerless, humiliated, and alone, even among her friends. Yet, despite the fear and embarrassment, she displayed quiet resilience. She followed instructions, endured the situation, and tried to make sense of the inexplicable events around her. Her courage, though small and understated, was remarkable in the face of such unexpected stress. By the time the morning ended, the incident had already sparked discussions among parents, teachers, and neighbors. People debated what had happened, why it had happened, and what should be done next. Rumors circulated quickly, fueled by concern and a desire for justice. The story of the bus ride, once just a small, private moment, had become a public matter. The quiet suburban town was suddenly buzzing with questions, worry, and the need to understand how an ordinary school bus ride could go so wrong. And while Emily returned to her classroom, trying to focus on lessons and friends, the memory of that morning stayed with her. It was a confusing mix of fear, embarrassment, and the stark realization that sometimes adults do things that children cannot understand. But it also planted the seeds for courage, resilience, and the hope that those who cared for her would step in to protect her, ensuring she would never have to feel so powerless again. The day continued, but the incident on the bus had left a mark, not just on Emily, but on everyone who had witnessed it and on the entire community. It was a reminder of the responsibility adults carry when caring for children, and of the delicate trust that exists between a child and those meant to guide and protect them. As the morning continued at school, the whispers and rumors about what had happened on the bus spread. Quickly, children shared their version of the story with classmates during recess, sometimes exaggerating details out of confusion or fear. The story of Emily kneeling on the bus became the center of attention, drawing the curiosity and concern of everyone around her. Some children felt sad for her, others were frightened because they imagined that it could happen to them. The schoolyard buzzed with talk, and teachers tried to calm the students, but even the adults could not ignore the unusual circumstances. At home, Emily's parents were beginning to sense that something was wrong. Her mother, Sarah, received a call from the school office while she was preparing breakfast for Emily's younger sibling. The voice on the phone was serious, almost urgent. "We need you to come to the school," the administrator said gently. "Emily has been involved in an unusual incident on the bus this morning. We want to ensure she's okay." Sarah's heart sank, her hands trembling slightly as she hung up the phone. Her mind raced with questions. She didn't understand why the school would call in such urgency for a simple bus ride. Within minutes, Sarah and her husband, Michael, arrived at the school. The parking lot was busier than usual, filled with worried parents and teachers moving quickly between vehicles and classrooms. Their eyes met in a silent exchange of concern before they hurried toward the school office. Inside, they found Emily sitting quietly, her small hands folded on her lap, her eyes wide but teary. She looked frightened but relieved to see her parents. "What happened, sweetheart?" Sarah asked softly, her voice filled with concern. Emily hesitated, unsure of how to explain the events without sounding disobedient or embarrassed. She whispered about the bus, the kneeling, and how the driver had singled her out. The words tumbled out in a rush, a mix of fear, confusion, and a need to be understood. Her parents listened carefully, holding her hands and offering comfort. Michael's jaw tightened as he processed the story. He struggled to understand why a child would be treated in such a way, especially by an adult who was supposed to ensure her safety. The sense of disbelief and concern quickly turned into determination. They promised Emily that they would do everything possible to ensure she felt safe and supported. Word of the incident soon reached other parents, sparking an immediate wave of concern and anger. Some parents called the school, demanding an explanation. Others gathered outside the school building, speaking in hushed tones but with clear urgency. The quiet suburban town, usually peaceful and calm, was suddenly alive with discussion, worry, and outrage. The idea that a child could be humiliated in front of peers during a normal bus ride was hard for anyone to accept. Social media, as it often does, amplified the situation. Parents shared accounts of the incident, photos of the school bus, and messages of support for Emily and her family. Within hours, the story had spread beyond the immediate neighborhood. Local community groups began posting about it, urging school officials to respond quickly and ensure accountability. The online discussion was passionate but respectful, with most people expressing concern for the child and the need for fair investigation. Meanwhile, Emily's classmates were still processing what they had witnessed. Some of the older students felt guilty for not speaking up. They hadn't known what to do in the moment, and the uncertainty left them uneasy. Teachers tried to guide discussions about kindness, fairness, and standing up for others, using the incident as a teachable moment without naming individuals. The students began to understand how important it was to look out for one another and to speak up when they saw someone being treated unfairly. Inside the school office, Emily met with a counselor who had been called in to help. The counselor's voice was calm and soothing, and she encouraged Emily to talk about her feelings. Emily shared how scared and embarrassed she had felt, how it had made her feel small and alone. The counselor listened patiently, validating her emotions and reassuring her that it was not her fault. For the first time since the incident, Emily felt a sense of relief. She realized that there were adults who believed her and wanted to protect her. Sarah and Michael spent the rest of the morning coordinating with the school. They met with administrators, asking detailed questions about why the bus driver had acted as he did, what policies were in place to protect students, and how such an incident could be prevented in the future. The administrators expressed regret for what had occurred and promised a thorough investigation. They assured the parents that steps would be taken to ensure that children were safe and that all bus drivers received proper training. While the adults worked to find answers, the story continued to grow in the town. Neighbors and friends reached out to Emily's parents, offering support and encouragement. Some shared their own experiences as children, times when they had felt singled out or embarrassed, hoping to help Emily's family understand that she was not alone. The community, usually quiet and reserved, was rallying around a child in need, demonstrating the strength and care that could emerge in difficult situations. At the same time, journalists from local news outlets began inquiring about the incident. Reporters called the school and the parents, seeking factual information to share with the public. They were careful to avoid speculation, focusing instead on verified details. A student had been asked to kneel on the school bus, the parents were involved, and the school was conducting an investigation. The presence of media added another layer of attention, intensifying the urgency of finding answers and ensuring that the child was safe. The days that followed were filled with meetings, phone calls, and planning. Emily's parents were determined not to let the incident fade into the background. They attended school board meetings, spoke to local leaders, and sought guidance from child safety experts. Each conversation reinforced their belief that the community needed to take responsibility for protecting its youngest members. Emily, meanwhile, began to regain a sense of normalcy at school. She returned to her classroom, greeted her friends, and resumed her lessons, though the memory of that morning on the bus lingered in her mind. Despite the difficult circumstances, the story also revealed moments of kindness and humanity. Teachers who had known Emily for years went out of their way to provide support. Classmates wrote notes and drew pictures to cheer her up. The local baker delivered cookies to the family as a gesture of solidarity. Every small act of kindness reminded Emily and her parents that they were not alone in facing this challenge. However, not everyone responded calmly. Some community members were angry and frustrated, demanding swift action against the bus driver. They wanted accountability and reassurance that children would be safe in the future. Town meetings became a place for voices to be heard, where parents shared their fears, asked questions, and called for change. The incident had sparked a conversation that reached far beyond the immediate family, highlighting the responsibility of adults to ensure children's safety and well-being. Through it all, Emily's parents focused on their daughter's emotional recovery. They emphasized that she was brave, that she had done nothing wrong, and that adults were taking steps to make sure such a situation never happened again. Slowly, Emily began to regain confidence, supported by the care and attention of those around her. Her laughter returned in small doses, and she began to enjoy school once more, though the memory of that morning remained vivid in her mind. By the end of the week, the school district had launched a formal review of the incident. Policies were being re-examined, training procedures were under scrutiny, and the bus driver was temporarily removed from his duties pending further investigation. The community watched closely, seeking reassurance that children would be safe and that no family would have to endure a similar experience. Meanwhile, the story of Emily's courage and the community's response spread further. Local social media pages shared updates, praising the family's advocacy and highlighting the importance of standing up for children. People from nearby towns expressed support, and letters of encouragement arrived for Emily, some sent anonymously, all reflecting a shared belief in fairness and protection for the young. In the quiet moments, Emily's parents reflected on the whirlwind of attention and concern. They were grateful for the support, but also aware that the incident had revealed vulnerabilities in systems meant to protect children. They discussed how they could help prevent similar situations, from advocating for policy changes to educating other parents and children about their rights. The experience had transformed their view of community involvement, showing them how ordinary people could come together to create safety and justice for a child. Even as the initial shock faded, the lessons lingered. Emily learned about courage, resilience, and the importance of speaking up when something feels wrong. The children who witnessed the event began to understand the impact of their silence and the power of empathy. The community realized that small towns could face challenges like any other place, and that it was the shared responsibility of adults to act when children were in need. By the time the weekend arrived, the town was still buzzing with conversation, but a sense of determination had taken root. Parents continued to advocate for safety, the school district remained committed to reviewing procedures, and Emily's family focused on healing. The memory of the bus ride was still present, but it was accompanied by a growing sense of hope. Hope that the community could learn, adapt, and ensure that no child would have to endure such fear again. Through the incident, the town began to see the strength in its people, the importance of vigilance, and the ways in which ordinary citizens could come together in extraordinary circumstances. It was a difficult lesson, but one that left a lasting impact, shaping not only the family's lives, but also the town's approach to safety, fairness, and care for its youngest members. The following week brought a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation to the small suburban town. News of Emily's incident had spread far beyond the school, and conversations about it continued to dominate community spaces. Parents gathered at playgrounds and coffee shops, discussing the need for accountability and child safety. The school district had promised action, but for Emily's family, the worry did not fade. Every morning, Sarah and Michael watched their daughter carefully, ensuring she felt safe, loved, and supported. Emily herself tried to return to normal life, but the memory of kneeling on the bus lingered like a shadow in her mind. It was late Friday afternoon when the first unusual signs appeared. Sarah had just returned from picking up Emily from school when she noticed the distant roar of motorcycles. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, a group of bikers riding through town as they sometimes did on weekends. But as the sound grew louder, a sense of unease settled over her. The motorcycles were not random. They moved with purpose, their engines echoing off the streets in a deep, resonant hum that seemed to demand attention. Emily, curious as always, ran to the front window. Her eyes widened as she saw dozens of motorcycles approaching, the riders clad in leather jackets and helmets. They were part of a well-known local biker group, the Hells Angels. The group had a reputation for being fierce and protective, often showing up in situations where they felt someone needed support or justice. Emily didn't fully understand the significance, but she sensed that something important was about to happen. Her parents were equally surprised. Michael stepped outside to get a better view, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Why are they here?" he muttered, mostly to himself. Before anyone could answer, the lead rider dismounted, removing his helmet to reveal a serious but calm expression. This was Marcus, a well-respected member of the local biker community, and he had a personal connection to Emily's family. Over the years, he had become a trusted friend, someone who had quietly supported the family in times of need. Today, he had arrived to ensure that Emily was safe. Word of Marcus's presence quickly spread. Neighbors peeked through windows and stepped onto porches, observing the unusual gathering. Soon, more members of the biker group arrived, their motorcycles filling the streets and the school parking lot. The sight was intimidating but not violent. The bikers had no intent to harm anyone. They were there as a show of solidarity, to stand with Emily and her family, and to make it clear that the community would protect its most vulnerable members. Inside the house, Emily clutched her mother's hand, her eyes wide with awe and a hint of fear. She had never seen so many motorcycles together in one place. Sarah knelt beside her, whispering reassurance. "They're here to help, sweetie. Nothing is going to happen to you." Emily nodded slowly, trying to trust her mother's words while her heart raced. Michael grabbed his coat and stepped outside, ready to meet Marcus and the other bikers. The bikers moved with coordination, their presence commanding attention without a single word being spoken. Marcus approached Sarah and Michael, his voice calm but firm. "We're here to make sure Emily and your family feel safe," he explained. "We don't want anyone to get hurt, and we want the community to know that children are important and deserve respect." Michael shook his hand, grateful for the support and the protection being offered. The bikers positioned themselves strategically around the parking lot, creating a visible presence that was both protective and reassuring. By now, word of the gathering had spread across the town. Parents and neighbors began to arrive, curious and concerned. Some brought children with them, others simply came to witness the unusual scene. As more people arrived, the parking lot grew crowded, filled with cars, motorcycles, and groups of onlookers. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. Everyone knew that this was a moment of solidarity rather than confrontation. People whispered among themselves, discussing the incident on the bus and the unexpected appearance of the bikers. Inside the school, teachers and administrators watched nervously. They had been following the story closely, aware that the presence of the bikers and the growing crowd could escalate the situation if not handled carefully. Some staff members were concerned about safety, while others recognized the importance of community support. A few administrators stepped outside to speak with Marcus, ensuring that the bikers understood the rules and emphasizing that their role was to provide protection and reassurance, not to cause fear. Meanwhile, Emily remained inside with her parents, peeking through the window at the growing crowd. Her emotions were a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She felt protected but also overwhelmed by the sheer number of people outside. The sound of motorcycles idling, the murmur of the crowd, and the occasional shout of encouragement created a scene unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her parents held her close, whispering reminders that she was safe and that everyone outside was there to support her. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus and a few of the bikers spoke quietly with the school principal. They expressed their concern for Emily's safety and made it clear that the community would not tolerate mistreatment of children. Their presence alone sent a powerful message that adults in the town would act to protect those who could not protect themselves. The principal, though nervous, appreciated the calm and respectful manner in which the bikers communicated their intentions. It became clear that this gathering was not about confrontation. It was about accountability, support, and visibility. Some parents, initially unsure about the bikers' presence, began to approach cautiously. They shared their gratitude with Marcus and the others, expressing relief that someone was standing up for the children. Conversations grew more open, with parents discussing the importance of protecting children and ensuring that incidents like Emily's did not happen again. The scene in the parking lot became a focal point for community solidarity, bringing together people from different backgrounds with a shared purpose. For Emily, the experience was extraordinary. She had been scared and embarrassed on the bus, but now she felt a sense of empowerment. Seeing so many adults committed to her safety, including people she had previously only known as friendly neighbors, gave her confidence. She realized that even in moments of fear, there were people willing to act with courage and care. Her small hand rested in her mother's as she watched the motorcycles, feeling both astonishment and gratitude. The bikers' presence also encouraged other community members to step forward. Teachers, parents, and local volunteers joined in, forming an informal network of support. Some offered food and water to the bikers and the crowd, while others helped organize the parking lot to ensure that everyone remained safe. The atmosphere, while intense, was also cooperative, with a shared understanding that the safety and well-being of Emily and children everywhere was the priority. Over the next hour, the bikers maintained a visible but calm presence. They spoke with parents, shared advice, and made sure the area remained orderly. They also reinforced an important message, that children should never feel powerless and that adults had a duty to intervene when a child was mistreated. Their quiet confidence and disciplined organization helped diffuse tension, creating an environment where fear was replaced by reassurance. Inside the school, Emily's parents continued to coordinate with staff and administrators. They discussed the need for ongoing communication and updates about the bus driver's investigation. Michael spoke with the principal about future safety measures, while Sarah met with the counselor to ensure Emily had access to emotional support. The combination of professional guidance, parental care, and community backing created a protective network around Emily that made her feel secure despite the extraordinary circumstances. By late afternoon, the crowd began to disperse slowly, leaving the bikers and a few parents behind to ensure that Emily and her family were safely escorted home. Marcus approached Sarah and Michael once more. "We'll continue to check in," he said. "Your family isn't alone. The town is watching, and we're here to help if anything happens." Michael nodded, deeply appreciative of the promise and the gesture. Sarah smiled, her relief mingled with gratitude. As the sun began to set, Emily looked out at the motorcycles lined up in the fading light. The roar of their engines, once intimidating, now seemed reassuring. She realized that even in moments of fear and confusion, there were people willing to step forward, to stand up for what was right, and to protect those who needed it most. For her, it was a powerful lesson in courage, community, and the unexpected ways support can appear when it is most needed. Later that evening, as Emily sat quietly in her room, she reflected on the events of the day. She thought about the bus ride, the fear and embarrassment she had felt, and the overwhelming support that had followed. The memory of kneeling on the bus would remain with her, but it was now accompanied by a stronger feeling of security and resilience. She understood that mistakes and misunderstandings could happen, but there were people ready to protect and guide her. The town, too, had been transformed. Parents, neighbors, and even local leaders had witnessed the impact of solidarity and community action. They recognized the importance of standing together to ensure that children felt safe, respected, and valued. What began as a frightening incident had grown into a story of support, protection, and accountability, a reminder that even in the most unexpected circumstances, courage and kindness could prevail. By the time night fell, the motorcycles had gone, the crowd had dispersed, and the town returned to its quiet rhythm. Yet the events of the afternoon would not be forgotten. Emily and her family had experienced the extraordinary power of community care, and the town had learned a valuable lesson about vigilance, empathy, and the importance of protecting its youngest members. The memory of that day, marked by the roar of engines and the presence of unlikely protectors, would remain a turning point in how the town viewed child safety and community responsibility. And for Emily, the lesson was clear. Even in moments of fear and uncertainty, there are always people willing to stand up, to protect, and to ensure that justice and care are never forgotten. The days following the dramatic parking lot gathering were filled with reflection, planning, and gradual healing for Emily and her family. The events of that Friday had left a lasting impression not only on them, but also on the entire town. While the roar of motorcycles and the sight of bikers standing protectively around the school parking lot had faded into memory, the lessons from that afternoon remained vivid. For Emily, life slowly began to return to normal, but the experience had changed her in ways that would stay with her for years. At home, Emily's parents focused on rebuilding a sense of routine and security. Sarah made sure that mornings were calm and predictable, with breakfast prepared early and quiet walks to the bus stop. Michael spent evenings helping Emily with homework and reading her favorite stories, ensuring that she felt grounded and loved. They avoided talking constantly about the incident itself, knowing that reliving the fear could be harmful, but they encouraged her to share her feelings whenever she wanted. Slowly, Emily began to feel safe again, learning that it was possible to move forward even after frightening experiences. School, too, became a place of adjustment. Teachers noticed that Emily had returned with a quiet determination, a new sense of confidence that came from knowing she was supported. She engaged more in class discussions and even helped her classmates understand the importance of kindness and standing up for one another. Some students who had witnessed the bus incident approached her quietly, offering apologies or words of encouragement. Emily, though still processing her feelings, was gracious and accepting, demonstrating remarkable maturity for her age. Meanwhile, the school district took concrete steps to address the incident. A formal investigation into the bus driver's actions was conducted, examining policies, procedures, and the events leading up to Emily being singled out. Officials reviewed training protocols for all drivers, ensuring that every staff member understood the importance of treating children with respect and fairness. The bus driver was suspended during the investigation, and the school district made a public statement emphasizing their commitment to child safety. Parents in the community expressed relief, knowing that the incident was being taken seriously. The broader community also continued to reflect on what had happened. Neighborhood meetings were held, bringing together parents, local leaders, and even some students to discuss safety, accountability, and how to prevent similar situations in the future. The conversation was thoughtful and collaborative, with people suggesting practical steps such as improved communication between schools and families, better training for staff, and ways to encourage children to speak up when they felt uncomfortable. Emily's story had become a catalyst for positive change, inspiring discussions that would strengthen the town's sense of responsibility and care. Amid all of this, the memory of Marcus and the Hells Angels bikers remained strong. Their unexpected presence in the parking lot had sent a powerful message, that the community was willing to protect its children and that adults had a duty to intervene when someone was treated unfairly. Marcus and his fellow bikers stayed in touch with Emily's family, checking in regularly to offer support and guidance. Their visits were calm and reassuring, reinforcing the idea that help could come from unexpected places and that there were always people willing to stand up for what was right. Emily's parents were deeply grateful for this ongoing support. They understood that the bikers' presence had not only protected Emily physically, but had also sent a clear message about accountability and solidarity. The memory of that Friday afternoon became a reference point for discussions with neighbors, teachers, and friends, illustrating how community members could act courageously and responsibly when a child was in need. As the weeks passed, Emily began to regain her full confidence. She returned to riding the bus with her usual enthusiasm, though now her parents walked with her to ensure she felt safe. The bus driver, who had been suspended, was ultimately removed from the route after the investigation confirmed that his behavior had been inappropriate and harmful. The school district implemented new training programs and stricter oversight to prevent future incidents, sending a clear signal that children's safety and dignity were non-negotiable. The town, too, reflected on its collective responsibility. Parents began paying closer attention to school policies and transportation procedures. They organized informal networks to communicate about safety concerns, creating a community watch-like system that emphasized vigilance without creating fear. Local media covered these initiatives positively, highlighting the importance of proactive community involvement in protecting children. Emily's story became a symbol of how ordinary townspeople could come together to create meaningful change. Emily herself grew in confidence and maturity. She learned to express her feelings more clearly, to speak up when something felt wrong, and to rely on trusted adults for guidance. Her experience, though frightening, had taught her resilience and courage. She also developed a deeper sense of empathy, understanding how others might feel in difficult situations, and recognizing the importance of kindness, support, and advocacy. Her small acts of compassion toward classmates became noticeable as she helped younger students feel safe and included. The family also took steps to transform their experience into something positive. Sarah and Michael began sharing their story with parent groups, emphasizing the lessons they had learned about vigilance, advocacy, and community support. They spoke about the importance of remaining calm but proactive, ensuring that children felt protected while also working with authorities to address problems responsibly. Their story resonated widely, encouraging other families to be more engaged in school and community safety. In the months that followed, Emily continued to flourish. She participated in school projects, joined reading groups, and made new friends, all while carrying with her the lessons of resilience and trust she had learned. Her parents remained close, monitoring her well-being and providing guidance without being overprotective. They encouraged her to enjoy childhood fully, reminding her that while the world sometimes had challenges, there were also countless moments of safety, joy, and support waiting to be experienced. The Hells Angels bikers occasionally visited, maintaining their supportive presence without being intrusive. They attended community events and offered guidance when requested, reinforcing the values of respect, protection, and accountability. Marcus, in particular, became a quiet mentor figure for Emily, teaching her that courage sometimes comes from standing firm in the face of fear, and that protection and care are acts of strength, not aggression. By the end of the year, the school district had completed its review, implementing lasting changes to policies, training, and oversight. Bus drivers received updated guidance on how to manage student behavior without causing fear or humiliation. Teachers and administrators were reminded of their responsibilities, and the importance of fostering a safe and nurturing environment for every child was emphasized repeatedly. Emily's incident had become a turning point, leading to a stronger and more vigilant system that benefited all students. The town itself had grown closer. Families who had once been casual acquaintances now shared a stronger sense of connection and purpose. Conversations about child safety, empathy, and accountability became part of the community culture. Residents recognized that their involvement, no matter how small, could make a significant difference in ensuring that children were treated fairly and respectfully. The incident had sparked a wave of awareness and action that would continue to influence the town for years to come. For Emily, the experience left a lasting impression on her character. She learned that even when something frightening or confusing happens, there are people willing to act with courage and integrity. She understood the importance of asking for help, trusting supportive adults, and standing firm in her values. Her journey from fear to empowerment was gradual but profound, shaping her understanding of the world and her place within it. As the family reflected on the year, they realized that while the incident had been difficult, it had also been transformative. It had brought them closer together, strengthened their connections with the community, and instilled values of courage, advocacy, and resilience. They were proud of Emily's growth and grateful for the support they had received from teachers, neighbors, and even unexpected allies like Marcus and the bikers. Ultimately, the story became one not only of fear and conflict, but also of hope, unity, and positive change. Emily's experience on the bus had been painful, but it had sparked action that rippled through the community, teaching lessons about responsibility, vigilance, and the power of standing together. The town learned that protecting children required more than rules. It required attention, care, and a willingness to act when it mattered most. Years later, Emily would remember the incident not just for the fear and humiliation she had felt, but for the support and solidarity that followed. She would recall the bikers standing in the parking lot, the parents and neighbors rallying around her family, and the school taking decisive action to protect students. These memories became part of her understanding of courage, empathy, and the importance of community. She learned that even in small towns, ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they acted with purpose and care. In the end, the incident that had begun with fear and uncertainty transformed into a story of resilience, protection, and growth. Emily's family, the school, and the town emerged stronger, guided by a renewed commitment to fairness, safety, and compassion. And for Emily herself, the experience became a foundational lesson in life, that even in moments of vulnerability, courage, kindness, and community can shine through, creating a lasting sense of hope and empowerment.